And Syracuse men's basketball has also struggled in the second half a little bit, but they held on to win last night at Boston College. And you and I have been crunching stats on that game all day long. The issue is we're never going to get as good as stats as Michael O'Connor has for us, so we throw it to the wall to break this game down. Mike, what do you got?
Well, Calvin, I don't have sports with shorts. I do have some of my own analysis here. I've broken down three main categories for Syracuse men's basketball in the clutch. We're going to be talking about second chance points, fast breaks, and three-point shooting. Now, let me just start off by saying that the clutch is defined by the final 5 minutes of games where the score was within 6 points. And I collected data from CBB Analytics for every possession with those circumstances for Syracuse men's basketball so far this season. You mentioned before that they were able to close out against Boston College, but let's see how they've been doing on the season as a whole. So breaking down this graphic, in this column we have Syracuse's offensive stats. The opponent's stats are in the second column over here, and those numbers with the shading behind them, so where Syracuse ranks out of all 365 teams in Division I men's basketball. You want to have worse stats for your opponent. That's why it's a better ranking there. But let's just break down stat by stat. First off, we're going to talk about second chances. Syracuse's defense limits opponents' efficiency. They're the best in the country at that. Opponents average 35% on their second chance field goals. The only problem is that they have the third highest offensive rebound percentage against the Orange. So Syracuse limits their ability to make each shot, but they give them so many shot opportunities that they're still getting outscored in those second chances. As we move on to fast break, the Syracuse defense forces twice as many turnovers as they allow assists. Part of that's led by the fact that they generate so many blocks and steals. It's the third highest rate in the country. What do they do with all those chances? They only make 71% of their shots. That's 10th worst in the NCAA. And you can see that despite having so many opportunities, they're not capitalizing on them, and they're getting outscored almost 2-1 on those fast break opportunities. And as we move to three-point shooting, this is probably the biggest indictment of scheme relative to skill. This first row here, three-point field goal percentage, Syracuse, fifth best in the country, 39% from behind the arc in the clutch. They are really good at knocking them down. And on defense, they're really good at limiting their opponents. Opponents only make 26%. That's the second best mark on defense. The only problem is when scheme comes into play. The 2-3 zone allows so many three-point opportunities. Teams shoot almost more threes against Syracuse than any other team in the country. 4 threes attempted per game in just the final 5 minutes. That's the fourth highest mark in the country. So even though Syracuse is playing like one of the most efficient offenses and one of the most efficient defenses from behind the arc, there's not much of a difference here. These expected three-pointers made, that's just multiplying their efficiency times the rate at which they shoot threes, and you can see there's no difference. There should be. Syracuse is playing like one of the best teams in the country behind the arc on both ends of the floor, and yet even though the 2-3 zone is allowing so many opportunities, they're not making up for it on offense. And you might look at that and say, well, Syracuse doesn't have to take as many threes. If you're taking more threes, you're likely losing, and that's no good for anybody. Then why has Syracuse lost 3 of their quad 1 matchups where they took less than 2 three-point attempts in the final 5 minutes? That is a crucial, crucial error, not on skill, but on scheme. Syracuse has to make a lot of changes on offense and how they approach the game if they want to be able to sustain these incredible stats. So Syracuse is playing well down the stretch, but their biggest strengths are overshadowed by their biggest weaknesses. And with that, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Michael, that was a lot. If you didn't get anything from that, just know this. He's right. That's Michael O'Connor. Thank you so much for taking the time.